to the Core Act. So not only are we going to be submitting the Core Act and supporting that on its face, but we're also going to be adding an additional withdrawal area that expands to the area that are now including Mount Emmons mining claims all the way over to Carbon Creek. So that's exciting. You know, the likelihood of that success does depend on Congress, so that's daunting as well. That said, it's a big step forward. We're also starting to work on easement language. A big chunk of the actual ore body up there and the land surrounding it are private lands now because they've been patented. So in order to prevent mining on those lands, we're going to have to wrap those up in kind of permanent easements that prohibit mining and also allow for recreation. So I don't know who's been on a HCCA hike to the Red Lady Summit or your own hike. You've probably been trespassing on mining company land. So not only are we hoping to make sure that we can't have mining there, we're also hoping to make that kind of memorialized on those private lands so we can continue to allow for public access. We're actually litigating with MEMC right now in a very friendly way some water rights issues. They hold significant conditional water rights, about 30 CFS of the Slate River. They have some conditional dams that would each be 100 feet tall on Elk Creek and Carbon Creek. And even though we're moving forward in a really positive direction, they've been hesitant to let those go pretty early. So HCCA has joined a suit. Some other folks are involved as well. We've got the Watershed Coalition's been involved. The Department of Justice actually entered. And so the BLM is also trying to enter this diligence filing to see that if we can get those rights off the books sooner than later. So that's been a lot of fun, and that'll continue to move forward this year. And that about kind of sums up some of those big elements, but as you guys can see, all of that stuff takes a couple of years to tackle. So we want to tell everybody it is time to start getting really excited, but it might be about 2 or 3 or even 4 years before we get to close down this town and throw a giant dance party. So anyway, thanks for all of your support, and keep coming to us with your questions and all of your energy. It's going to be a long haul. We're getting there. And we have some really good things in the work, and you know, a lot of creative processing to get it through to the finish. And with that, I'll pass things over to Brett, our Executive Director.
Good evening, everyone. Brett Henderson, Executive Director of High Country Conservation Advocates. I appreciate the kind words, Sue. I feel like 12 years has gone by way too quick. As I like to joke with some people, when I started here, I felt like the Red Lady mine fight was so much bigger than anything that I could fit into and be a part of. It'd been going on for so long. And at this point now, I've been here for a quarter of that fight now, and I'm starting to remember, my first Red Lady ball that I threw was the 33rd one. And it's just amazing how time flies and how much the situation up there has changed. But I'm very, very grateful and hopeful to be a part of that final piece of the puzzle. And while Sue mentioned that Matt couldn't be here tonight for good reason, he wanted me to plug the GMUG Forest Plan revision and remind everybody that the comment period for that has opened, and now we have about 80 days or so. So visit gmugrevision.com or our website. Get information about the plan. We have suggestions for comments. We're always here to help you guys craft those comments. It's incredibly important. The current forest plan is, well, it was done in the same year I was born, 1983. So 38 years now. It's the oldest in the nation. So these impacts and input that you guys put into this will really shape the future of our national forests for generations to come. So very, very important, get the word out, make sure that everybody comments that you care about and loves this land. It's a very important process. So Julie had kind of mentioned our foundational defensive work, I would say at many times, around preventing a mine on Mount Emmons. I want to briefly touch on our newest program, Stewardship, which I consider a little more offensive. a few years ago, we started mulling over the idea of having and holding these volunteer stewardship events to get people like you out on the land to volunteer your time for habitat improvement, water attenuation efforts. And the project's incredibly important for climate resiliency here in our valley. Essentially, they keep more water up here in our valley, which also plays a role in drought, timber, climate change, sage-grouse habitat, everything. And since then, we've really grown that program. This year, I believe we probably have about 10 or so projects throughout the year. And we brought on our first stewardship fellow in Eli Smith here, who will get up and talk a little bit later. Eli is a master's environmental management student at Western, and John helped identify this opportunity and bring Eli on for us with a partnership and funding, and it's worked out great. My hope through all of this is that we continue to grow that, but that's only going to happen with the continued partnership of some of our great people who are here. National Forest Foundation with Joe Lavarini, 1% for Open Space with Molly, and we partner with CPW, U.S. Forest Service, and BLM, but the most critical component, in my opinion, no offense guys, is the volunteers. And we need man hours out there to show that these are projects that our community cares about. So, my hope is with some of this conversation here that you'll feel compelled to sign up for some of our stewardship projects, and we have some great ones coming up this weekend. Friday is a tour day, Saturday and Sunday is on Flat Top, and Monday is out on Black Sage Pass, Monson Gulch, out by Tamichi Dome. So, with all this in mind, please sign up if you have the available time to do so. Well, without any further delay, I'd like to introduce my friend and our guest speaker here tonight, Dr. John Hausdoerffer is first and foremost a ecological philosopher, if you will. He's an author, written 9 books, and I suppose he moonlights as the dean of the Clark School of Environment at Western Colorado University, and we're very honored to have him. And I'm sure this will be a great talk. But keep in mind, signing up for the stewardship projects and consider what kind of ancestor you want to be. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Brett. Good to see everybody. It's an honor to be here. 44th Red Lady. That's incredible. I was telling the basic story to an elder of mine who's never been to the Valley recently and thinking about tonight. And what she said was she's run a lot of nonprofits through her life, and she's in her 70s now, and she said, that is incredible multi-generational work to sustain an effort over 44 years. And to think about not just the persistence and relevance that needs to be kept alive, right, and the incredible combinations of financial and social and intellectual and natural capital necessary to sustain over time, but to continue to engage new generations. I think the child who had their first sentence, I see dirt, maybe that's a prophet. Like, oh man, there's going to be more dirt here. But no, just that is the work of being a good ancestor. My newest book is called What Kind of Ancestor Do You Want to Be? And seeing the 44th Red Lady makes me think about the kind of celebratory work that is involved in being a good ancestor, the playful work that's involved in it. I ski Red Lady every winter, but also the serious, persistent, and relevant work necessary. So congratulations on that. I remember the bumper sticker, "It's not a done deal." And the last time I gave a keynote, the first thing out of my mouth was, what I love about HCCA is you undo done deals. So let's all keep our fingers crossed and stay humble and persistent about the CORE Act, and it's just an honor to share this valley with you all. I want to thank you for both this incredible mountain above us all and the water quality and everything goes with it. I do want to say that I'd like to reframe this question tonight, though. Instead of what kind of ancestor do you want to be, and thinking about the work you've done, I want to reframe it and ask, how do we learn to allow the land to be our ancestor? What kind of ancestor is the land, and how do we learn to be great ancestors from the land, right? The way in which you've personified Red Lady is beautiful to me. And it recognizes the personhood of Red Lady. Right? And to me, a person is any community or system that pursues its own good in its own way. And that's not just living beings. The city of Toledo, not like Berkeley, okay? Toledo. City Council voted to recognize the personhood of Lake Erie. Right? Just like the Supreme Court in, I think, 1883, Jim, maybe, I need a lawyer here to help me out, recognize the personhood of corporations. We're starting to see that turn a bit, right? To recognize the personhood of central keystone ecological systems that allow for the people of Toledo to be who they are in that place. And if you have industrial agricultural runoff causing eutrophication, killing off all life, the fishing industry collapses economics, right? Kids can't swim in it. Culture, right? Nothing can live in it. Ecology. And the suffering that people experience from the suffering of that lake is a reminder that the lake is a person, right? Well, Red Lady has personhood, and you all have enlivened that idea in all of us. And I just want to thank you for that, and it inspired me to rethink this question too. How is the land an ancestor, and how does the land teach us about the kind of ancestor we want to be? So what I want to do, if you don't mind, I know Arvin's okay with it, I'm going to do a little reading here. You up for a little literary moment? Is that okay? You're okay with that? Yeah. It's such an educated into the valley. I love it. I'm Gunnison. I'm not hating on the Gunnison side. They love readings in Gunnison. This is from my essay in the book. And we've gathered 45 authors from 20 different self-identified cultures around the world. This question, what kind of ancestor do you want to be, comes from Turtle Island indigenous communities. I heard it. An elder on the White Earth Reservation posed the question to me originally, and so we try to feature a lot of indigenous authors to recognize the origins of the question. But we also have, Black and Latinx, Indian, New Zealand, authors from all over the world. This is me though at Yule Pass. Huh? Let's make it local, right? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, it's not Red Lady. That would have been freaking cool. Should I just say Red Lady every time I get to Yule Pass? Or do it like a computer replacing it? Like Red Lady. All right, are you ready for a little reading? Okay. When I first studied climate disruption in the early 1990s, the data led my imagination to grieve for my unborn children and for their children. Projected maps of ice cap recession, species extinction, sea level rises, and human displacement stretched my moral compass to fear for the peoples, beings, and systems of 2050 and beyond. I never fully imagined myself living with the consequences in my prime. The grave dangers seemed away in space and time, just like my food came from away and like my waste went away. But as a father in 2018, all of that changed. Every month of every year, my daughters, Adelia, now 13, Sol now 10, and I like to go snow hunting in the mountains around our home of Gunnison, Colorado. Even in summer and early fall, we strap skis to backpacks and scramble up slopes until we find those tucked away wind deposits that cling to the mountain through summer's heat. Then we ski, laughing at ourselves for loving that dance down snow so much that we're willing to hike 4 hours for 15 turns. Show of hands, who's done it? Right? Our rule is that we have to ski once per month, every month, until we get to 100 straight months in 2023. This is getting eerie. But and it is. This is about climate anxiety, so I appreciate that. I actually paid him to do that. All right, we're back to snow hunting, okay? Snow hunting is a challenge that has also taught my daughters about their mountains, about those first trickles of water that lead from the snow patches of the Elk Mountains to the tributaries of the East and Gunnison rivers until the Colorado River returns those waters to the Pacific Ocean, and eventually, until the cycles of life return the moisture right back home as new snow to renew our dance and the dance of life. Snow renews the cultures and ecosystems of the West, and it also renews my bond with my daughters. Snow is sacred. Whenever we worry that we might miss a month or fall short in finding snow somewhere new, we look to Yule Pass, old reliable, just west of Crested Butte, Colorado. Where? Wait, where? Just west of where? Just west of, I thought, oh, Whooping. Usually Crested Butte there's Whooping, but just west of Crested Butte, Colorado. Yule Pass sits at 11,300 feet, you might correct me here, tucked between the dark slate of Purple Mountain and the orange scree of Cinnamon Mountain. Did I get that right? Okay. I looked at a map, but I could be wrong. Okay. Since 1992, I've skied the heart-shaped snow of Yule Pass in September. Adelia, the 13-year-old, has skied it 5 times with me, and in 2018, we were eager to initiate Sol. Sol was even more excited for this initiation after having heard tales of Yule Pass for years. But when we arrived, the snow was gone. There was a small, dirty strip on the steep underbelly of the snowfield, and the rest of this water tower for the west and dance floor for my daughters was literally reduced to rubble. The route was now too dangerous for Sol's initiation, so just Adelia and I skied the dirty snow of the underbelly, squeezing in 5 laps of 5 turns each. I'm counting it, okay? We tried to laugh at ourselves again, for as always enjoying whatever we could, but the laughs were not as hearty. As an environment and sustainability professor at Western Colorado University, I know the studies well. Thank you. The Winter Elk Mountains could see a 75-day reduction in ski season due to climate impacts by 2090. What does this reduced snowpack mean for ranchers? For forest fires? For the indigenous homelands of the Southwest downstream? For alpine, subalpine, semi-desert, and riparian species relying on the waters from these snows? For bird migrations through this corridor? Man, 1/3 of birds since my birth year, 73. 1/3 bird species gone, right? For the what does it mean for the urban civilizations relying on Western reservoirs? For the peoples of Mexico at the bottom of an unjust water distribution system? These are not abstract thoughts and concerns, and I feel a call to fight against these climate injustices when I contemplate the social and ecological impacts of climate change. My hometown right now is flooded in New Jersey, right? Everything's underwater. But the disappointment in Sol's eyes as she looked down upon the dwindling snowfield of Yule Pass conveyed something more powerful than all of the data on climate chaos I had seen for a quarter century. I saw loss in her eyes. Grief. It triggered my own visceral sense of loss, the loss of a way of life, loss of a way of being, loss of our playful interconnectivity with the very basis of life for all beings. I will never forget that look on Sol's face, that loss. It was a look that called me out, that stretched my actions to the reality, livelihood, ecosystem services, and connectivity of unborn generations. It was a look that asked me, what kind of ancestor do you want to be? And, you know, it's a hard question for me because I'm still alive, right? And so I had to really think through this question when I first heard on the White Earth Reservation from a man named Michael Dahl. And really, like, give myself permission to see myself as always and already an ancestor, even if I never have kids. I do, but even if I never have kids, even if I'm not remembered, or even if there's no crumbling photograph of me on a wall somewhere with stories about me, right? I'm still always and already an ancestor, right? Because like in chaos theory, that flap of a butterfly's wings can cause a hurricane somewhere, right? So every action, every inaction of mine, right, sets in motion systems of resilience or violence or somewhere in between for the communities that allow for us to have a livable existence everywhere. 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, a week from now. I'm not in control of that. But I give myself permission to see myself in the now, regardless of whether or not I'm remembered, and giving myself permission to see myself as an ancestor, right, empowers me to act as if my choices will matter, and to focus in on what do I control, right? I don't control whether or not there's 70 less ski days in 2090 or water reaching Mexico. We know it doesn't reach now, but you get my point, right? I think I control 2 things, and I'm not even that much in control of those, right? It requires diverse communities to challenge me and to keep the conversation going, but I think I control a sense of my values and the evaluation of them, right? I value connection with my daughters. I value play in nature. I value an understanding and visceral touch with the source of my sustenance. Those are values I have that I reenact with every month of that journey to 100 months of skiing. I'm in control of those values, and in examining those values, I'm in control of who challenges them. I want to make sure I surround myself with diverse points of view, right? One of our grad students, Regina Lopez White Skunk, is Ute Mountain Ute, right? And she challenges me all the time around what were these mountains to the Ute, right? And what does it mean to claim them as my home? What does it mean for me to fight for wilderness and call a space that is someone's homeland my wilderness, right? To challenge myself with that diverse perspective. And then the second thing I control, right, is whether or not my actions are driven by those values, right? Whether or not I keep finding snow with my kids, whether or not I find an age-appropriate way to connect them with those first drips of the headwaters and educate them on why that's declining. Gotta be careful at that age not to just depress them, right? Whether or not I ensure there's curriculum at Western for next generation leaders on climate action planning. I'm in control of whether or not my actions are driven by my values. The rest, right? And so when I ask what kind of ancestor do you want to be, the first question, the first part of the answer is, don't make it about you. Right? It's not about whether or not you'll be remembered or how you'll be remembered, right? It's about who are your ancestors, to what extent are they just within your family, to what extent are they from diverse cultures that might unsettle your sense of who you are and how you should live, to what extent are they from the greater than human world, to teach you these lessons of what your values are and what actions are available to you driven by those values. And so let me just share a really interesting passage from one of the authors. This is a Seneca Nation author. It's from the book, but I didn't want to find the page. I have it printed out. Caliena Bray. And for her, corn is her ancestor. And corn teaches her how to live, how to think about how she wants to be an ancestor. And I'm going to have you think about corn, and we're going to think through how is this land our ancestor, helping us think about how to live around us here. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about wild rice, and we'll do the same exercise. Okay? And this is what Caliena Bray says. How beautiful to watch the unfolding of a relationship that binds plants and humans. I mean, corn's in their creation story, right? Pass this book around. This is the artist Christy Belcourt, the painting she did to think about the cosmological power of corn, right? So keep that image in mind here. How beautiful to watch the unfolding of a relationship that binds plants and humans. The more time I spend in these dense urban landscapes, I notice myself more consistently forgetful of the intimate bonds between humans and plants. It is why these memories of corn have become increasingly important for my grounding and ancestral connection. And it is by examining my relationship to corn that I find it possible to explore the intricate threads linking my physical, spiritual, and cultural existence to a greater understanding of human and non-human relationship. And she ends with this passage. I love it. I hope it sticks with you forever, because it's done it for me. Over her greenhouse on her land, there's a thing that she's painted. Remember, they've been colonized and everything, right? They tried to bury us, but forgot we were seeds. They tried to bury us, but forgot we were seeds. Corn taught her that. Corn taught her ancestors that, right? You see the planting happening in that photo, the power of burying as a source of a new beginning, of blossoming, right? They tried to bury us, but forgot we were seeds. And that is her speaking from her ancestor corn and her human ancestors who have continued to find creative agency in staying as seeds, no matter how deeply they're buried. Fucking awesome, isn't it? Yeah. Right? Do we have anything like that? Think about this valley. Think about, Sue was reminding me of the importance of the water program you all have in HCCA, and a reminder of how key water quality, right? Both the intrinsic value of water quality, the human need for water quality, and the business headache of water quality for mining companies, right? How key water quality has been in this 44-year struggle, right? Is that your corn? Is that water reminding you some version of they tried to bury us but forgot we were seeds? I don't know. Many of you lived here longer than the 30 years I've been here. I was telling Jim I arrived the day after the bank blew up. Whew. I was telling you that too. When you think of your connection to this place and thinking, okay, is the land an ancestor? How is that? I talked about snowpack, right? Anything here in your connection to this place that comes anywhere close to Kalyena's connection with corn? And we don't want to co-opt an indigenous connection that's emerged from struggle, right? Many of us are transient peoples descended from transient people and want to honor indigenous struggle, not just take like, ooh, cool, I have a corn thing too, So with sensitivity toward that, I'm asking you if there's something that connects you that deeply to the place that even when you're feeling like you're facing a done deal, you got them right where you want them. Yeah.
So a year ago, when the pandemic was really grabbing us by the throat, I live all the way at the top of Crested Butte South, and the snow's melting off, and the chipmunks are running around, the golden mantle ground squirrels are doing their thing, and the voles are starting to reveal their patterns through the snow as it was going away, and the winds were coming over Whetstone, and I'd be out in this brilliant sun, and all this wind would just make me grab a jacket. And what occurred to me is that for all the fear that we had around the pandemic, all the rest of life around us was just getting on with it. It was just happening, right?
Yeah. Don't let me put words in your mouth. What I'm hearing from you is like you're letting the other species be your elders there, reminding you that it's another year.
Yeah.
They got shit to adapt to too. Yours happens to be a global pandemic, but watch how they adapt as the cold comes. They're your teachers.
And they've been doing it for centuries and centuries and centuries.
In millennia. And, my books that come out September 15th is a 5-book series called Kinship. And you're talking about kinship. That is kinship. Robin Wall Kimmerer is one of my co-editors, and she has a book called Braiding Sweetgrass. And if you talk, Robin Wall Kimmerer. And if you talk to Robin, she's got this cool thing. She says, if you look at a lot of indigenous creation stories, and I'm like, maybe ours too, actually. Mine, Judeo-Christian, even though I'm not Christian, that's how I'm raised. She said, humans show up last. And when you show up last, everything else is your elder. So why aren't you respecting it as your elder? Why aren't you learning from it as your elder? Right? And so your comment reminded me of that. Yeah. Okay, I got bad hearing, but I'll go close.
For me, it's just the mountains and the solidity of the mountains. And I moved here 50 years ago, and watching them change the terrain, the trees, and everything through the different seasons.
Yeah.
And I really, really relate to that.
Yeah.
And it really gets me very deeply.
Oh, and it's a spiritual impact on you. Yeah. No, I got excited about an academic job after 1 year at Western and went to Florida, and I missed how I was framed and almost cradled, right? by these mountains.
And I've skied and biked all of these mountains.
Yeah.
I'm like you, I skied every once a year for a while.
All right, I want you to meet my daughters. Let's do one more. Sue.
Well, I keep coming around to resiliency and fortitude. And I think about the Gunnison sage grouse. Comes to mind every now and then. And here is a species that's lived in our valley for 300,000 years, give or take. And they have been put through more challenges than any of us, certainly. And it's amazing that they're still here all these years later. They're hanging on, although possibly by a thread, but they're hanging on, hanging on. And I think that's a pretty good metaphor for all of us here in this valley. We're hanging on in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and so sage grouse is an incredible ancestor. I'll share an example I heard on the White Earth Reservation the day I heard this question in, 2013 or something. The man's name, as I said, was Michael Dahl, and as I listened to him, how do you answer this question? I don't even know where to begin. He told me a story, and then I got to go do this the next day about wild ricing. And he talked about how they're Anishinaabe people, and we're not Anishinaabe without wild rice in our stomach during the wild ricing moon in August, right? It's a cultural keystone, like the salmon are for Northwest tribes, right? It's a cultural keystone. And it's in their creation story. A leader of theirs, when they lived in New England near the Algonquians, was told in a dream to move west with his people until they arrived at the food that grew on the water, right? It's a cosmological power. The diet's a superfood, right? Economically, they're able to, even through the challenges of colonialism, make some extra money selling it by the roadside, right? It connects them with the lakes, and it gives them a keystone role in that ecosystem. He says, we groom the lake. When a lake goes without ricing, after a while, it stops germinating. It's like a forest that doesn't get a low-intensity fire, right? So economically, ecologically, culturally, cosmologically, dietarily, rice makes him an Anishinaabe, right? And he kind of said, for the ancestor question, the rice is, he didn't use this word, but the rice is kind of his barometer for how he's doing as an ancestor. Acid rain threatens it. Climate change closes that window needed for a certain temperature for germination at a certain time of year. Scientists from the University of Minnesota partnered with corporations in California to patent the frickin' seed and be able to grow it on ponds in California and still slap wild rice on the package and make it harder to sell it by the roadside, right? And so there's been a lot of displacement of connection with the wild rice. And so for him, it's like, he's like, my son's daughter's son or whatever can still greet their dad off the lake after a day of ricing and roll around in the rice on the garage floor, quote unquote, like it's a moose hide. And I've been a good ancestor. So not only can the land teach us as our ancestor how to live, how to adapt to shock, how to stay resilient in the face of disturbance, it's also kind of our barometer, right? So what is our rice? Not just, where's the book? Thank you. I'm gonna finish with my reading, and then I'm gonna ask you, is Red Lady Crested Buttes rice? How is Red Lady an ancestor? And so just be thinking about that here. And this is where I kind of finish my snowpack idea. How many of you know Alan Huertas? You've seen his show, his Think Radio program? Well, the day after You'll Pass, I was interviewed on Think Radio, and we got in our first dusting on Uncompahgre. Yeah? It's just like, Alan gives me hope, walking out of Think Radio. Oh my God, yeah, first one with the clouds part. I think it happened here 2 weeks ago, right? And you're like, oh, it's gonna happen again. The mountains, the seasons are turning, like you were saying about the mountains. Walking out of the Think Radio studio, I reflected on Alan's comments about story being how we measure if we're a good ancestor. What's your place? What's your place in the story of a place can help you think about your role as an ancestor. You're part of a story shed, if you will. It's not just will you be remembered. It's what's your role in the larger story. What's your character, your chapter. Indeed, continuing the right story in word and deed measures our ancestral value, and those stories, for me, are told in the land. Thinking also about the stories and measurements emerging from Michael Dahl's Wild Rice, I wondered, what's my rice? If I can figure out my rice, then I got the beginnings of knowing not only how to measure if I'm being a good ancestor, but what in the land is going to teach me how to be a good ancestor. So it's like, what kind of ancestor do I want to be? Now I'm just trying to figure out my place. Well, that's fun. Right? I could do that on my bike, I could do that with my kids, I could do that skiing, I could do that with my ecology buddies. Like, I can listen to the diverse members of this community and think about what makes this place what it is. What's that like center of being, that cultural keystone for what it means to be a Gunnisonite, right? Well, that should be joyful. As a transient descendant of transient people long removed from the source of their food, heat, and ancestors, what is my rice? I don't have Michael Dahl's indigenous historical connection, nor should I pretend to. But to what extent can I begin to find my own rice without co-opting Michael's connection to place and past? In other words, here's the rice question for me. What, one, connects me to the health of the land, while two, also connecting me to the love of my ancestors, and three, to the hopes of my children's children? As I leave Think Radio Studio, my thoughts return to my children. And there, if they so choose, children. I look out at the square blocks of 14,000-foot Uncompahgre Peak to the southwest and see the year's first snows blanketing the high mountains. I smile, hoping that the same storm has begun the process of returning the heart-shaped snowy dance to Yule Pass, and it has. Right? We were just there. My thoughts turn to winter, to crisp days spent skiing with my daughters. I think of my grandparents, who retired early to a small trailer in New Hampshire so they could ski every day. But skiing's a privileged activity. Here we go again with conservationism based on privilege. Well, I think of my mother, a special ed teacher and single mom, who worked every weekend as a ski instructor so my four siblings and I could ski for free. I think of my formative journey to Colorado 30 years ago in search of deeper snow. I think of skiing with my family every winter to our 10 by 12 cabin made of junk, passing to my daughters the art of the perfect carve through fresh snow. Think of their great-grandchildren and wonder if there'll be a seventh generation of ski bums in my family. I know my rice, it's snowpack. And if that snowpack declines and my generation doesn't act radically to mitigate climate change, I worry that I will fail as an ancestor. But regardless the dire potential outcome of our apathy, acting now as if I'm already a good ancestor, connecting my daughters with the power of snow while showing them and my students options for confronting climate change enlivens a more resilient future for my descendants. Maybe they'll even ski in the summer. Yeah. So I've got like an ancestor giving me lessons on how to live. That's also my barometer for how I'm living. That's also the most playful part of my life. That also pushes me to think about water in the Hopi, water in riparian ecosystems, water in low-income people trying to eke out a life in Phoenix, right? Water in a ski industry, water in a destination college. But I get to think about it through a playful commitment that continues to fuel me. IPCC reports from the UN depress the hell out of me and make me feel just lost and I'm getting a bigger truck, screw it. Right? But if I have a connection to a cultural keystone that's playful, that brings me back to the ancestors of the past, connects me in the present to a piece of land that can instruct me and connects future generations to what I love and how I love to live, I've got to start. Right? That fuels me every day to get at those two things I control. What are my values? What actions are available to me to express those values? And that's what kind of ancestor I want to be. How is Red Lady an ancestor? Molly, such a good student. I thought you'd be in the front row. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been digging around my ancestors quite a bit for mythologies that have been really interesting to me and trying to figure out how they're applicable to here in this landscape, because these mythologies come from Ireland, Scotland, they're removed, and I don't have people that live in these places anymore. But there's one story about a sovereignty goddess, and the sovereignty goddess married the king of the land. That was required of the king. He could not be king unless the sovereignty goddess accepted him, and they married. And she required a lot of things. She had these taboos set on him, things that he could not do. And many of them were ways in which he treated the land, and it demanded a relationship of stewardship and protection. So the king's job was to maintain protection of the land, and in return, the sovereignty goddess gave bounty, gave food and water and animals and all the beautiful things that we get from the place. And so, but he had to earn that, and it was a marriage. And so I've been thinking about Red Lady as our sovereignty goddess, because these were local, tribal deities that lived in the land. They weren't, the human communities were very small pre-Christian times. And so the Red Lady and what we have here with Pekka is a relationship of stewardship. We have married Red Lady, we are agreeing to protect her, and in exchange we have all this bounty. A lot of it is beauty, but certainly water, recreation,
Well, and if by we you include other species, then there's habitat for elk migration, and
right.
yeah.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about that.
That's lovely.
It is a relationship that we've established in this community between the Red Lady, and the Red Lady really is a sovereignty goddess.
In Winona LaDuke's ancestor essay, she calls it a covenant. A covenant, and the word she uses for land in the Anishinaabe is aking, A-K-I-I-N-G, which means not land, but land to which we belong. Right? And I think that's what, Molly, let me put words in your mouth. I'm kind of hearing that. It's a covenant, right? And Robin Wall Kimmerer wants us to stop calling the greater than human world it, right? But in this era in which it's important to be sensitive about pronouns, like I'm not going to go with he or she, right? Even though we go with the lady, and I like that. She uses the word ki, K-I, which is like being or land, living land or something. So she wants us to, like, instead of saying like, it looks so ready for snow, like ki looks ready for snow. And she also wants to start shifting nouns to verbs. So when it comes to our kinship with, say, a mountain that provides through this covenant and this relationship, or the kinship with animals reminding you you're going to get through an adaptive time, the word kin becomes kinning. When you were inspired by those animals preparing for winter, you were kinning. You weren't noticing your more than human kin, you were kinning. It's like an action. And like for her, it like reminds us of the personhood of the more than human world. How else is Red Lady an ancestor? Mount Emmons, if you will. Cold Creek, however you want to do it.
I think in like the ricing example, where the ancestor, it's partly about holding us accountable and being a barometer for our success. I think Red Lady can serve as that mirror or that measurement of, have we been a good ancestor? Have we protected it? Is the water still clean? Is the snow still deep?
Wow.
Are the aspens still blooming? Like that, it can be that rice mirror to us.
Yeah, and I would just, do you ever feel Key staring down at you as you're just trying to like peacefully ride your townie through town? You're like, man, I gotta go do some action now. Fine. Like an elder would, right? I like that a lot. And you know, the mirror, the barometer are words, I've used words like that. And to me, even the word barometer feels like I'm sort of like reducing it to like an object. And it's like, if it's kinning, then instead of barometer, it's elder, right? Elder teaching me, elder calling me out. We showed up last. One more. How's Red Lady an ancestor? Yeah.
Well, I would offer that much like where you started with the corn being a seed. As a
They
gift.
tried to bury us and forgot we were seeds.
Yeah.
I just had to say it again, sorry.
With that, what Red Lady has also done over 44 years is coalesce this community about something which is larger than our own shadows. Right?
Huh.
It's something to care about more than just me
Wow.
or just you.
Yes.
And I think a community can only thrive when it has something that coalesces around a bigger vision, a bigger purpose.
And that's also what great elders remind us of through family stories, through connection with traditions, values, legacies, a reminder that there's a lot that's bigger than us out there, and that humility that sparks real learning, that sparks forbearance, comes from having reminders on the landscape and in the culture that we ain't the end of the story, we ain't the point of the story, we're part of the story, right? And we're walking on stories. I want to end by talking about, this stewardship program. I think it's incredible. I congratulate you on it. And what I would say is whenever I've heard a criticism through the years that HIC has been too defined by the Red Lady battle, it's become a NIMBY organization, right? There's also a friend of mine I was talking to yesterday said, well, there's YIMBY, right? Yes, in my backyard. And I just think it's really cool to see high country conservation advocates involved in both, right? Like involved in the hell no, and involved in the yeah but. What if we created something new that is not only restoring the resilience and stability and integrity and beauty of this place as a livable home for human and more than humans, but also that connects us with a global crisis, a global problem. And I think the stewardship program is a brilliant, and I hope the beginning of 44 years of that, right? A brilliant complement to the Red Lady battle, to the GMUG vision. So I'm going to ask Eli Smith to come up. He's a bit of a guinea pig tip of the spear. Which do you want? The first we've had other MEM students involved in HCCA, right? Michelle Wilk and Cassidy Toss Garcia. It's been an honor. But with Eli, we're really trying to give some ownership to the role of the MEM student in an organization. And it's a dream come true for me as the founder of the MEM, and Eli couldn't think of a better person to get it started. So let's welcome Eli up to talk a little bit about this YIMBY, the beginning of the YIMBY legacy at HCCA here at the Stewardship Program.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
My name is Eli Smith. I am the Environmental Stewardship Fellow at HCCA, also in my second year of my master's program in the MEM program. And we know already the land is our ancestor, and to feel those values and those actions taking place during stewardship projects is really powerful, and you can get those same kinds of feelings as I'm sure you do right now with having that connection to this area. I absolutely feel cradled here, and it's a nice, safe place to learn even more about the land. I'm a new resident. I moved to Gunnison almost a year ago, but feel really welcomed here, and want to thank these swashbuckling volunteers that have come out to some of our environmental stewardship work days so far. It's been a lot of fun, and it's really just now the start of the season, I guess a month ago, and we have 6 events this month too. So please talk to me if you want to get involved, and I'm looking forward to being the fellow for this stewardship program and building that up for HCCA this year. Very happy to be here. So thank you very much. Come on out. Yep.
Can you talk about some of the special perks for people that show up this weekend?
This weekend.
Is she a plant? Did you plant her? I don't even know this woman.
He didn't coach me, I promise.
Right.
They're just great perks. I feel like you should share them.
Starting tomorrow, we have a tour day of previous structures that have been implemented on Flat Top Mountain north of Gunnison for the past few years. I think there's over 700 rock structures that help build up habitat for the Gunnison sage grouse and other species that use vegetation that's there. So we've got that, and then Saturday, Sunday, and Monday we have, if you want to get your hands dirty, some actual building and learning how to do these structures. We do provide lunch. We provide nitro cold brew from Aaron over here. That'll be really exciting. As well as beer donated from the Zuni Street Brewing Company, and that'll be hosted at the base camp. There's another conservation organization group joining us, and they will be camping out at the Miller Ranch. So it'll be a lot of fun, and in 2 weeks, we are doing some more beaver-related work with the U.S. Forest Service in Taylor Park, implementing some beaver dam analogs, which is mimicking a beaver dam, attenuating that water in the landscape, raising that so we have more throughout the season. It's a really great way to see, immediately how water can be raised with a little bit of touch, and hopefully we can bring back some beavers into the environment too. And then Saturday, September 18th, we'll be partnering with the Bureau of Land Management to do the National Public Lands Day event. And there, they usually give out free t-shirts and passes to get into federal parks and other places, so you can get one of those too. And yeah, we usually do partner with the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management right now. And we're hoping to get more community involvement throughout next season too. So that's kind of what I'm here for, just to look ahead.
Where's the best place to sign up?
Best place to sign up would be hickacb.org. We have a stewardship page, or you can email me directly, eli@hickacb.org. Talk to me right now.
Thank you, Eli.
Yep. Thanks so much.
Great, beautiful. Are there any other thinly veiled plants in the crowd with any questions?
I'll have to move seats.
Well, so I just want to say, know that the MEM program is your neighbor. Joe here from National Forest Foundation is an MEM grad. Tobias here is an MEM grad with an incredible passion for wilderness. We're your neighbor. Eli's project is a 600-hour project, but per year the MEM puts out 25,000 hours of projects to extend the reach of organizations around the world. We have projects that have been in Himalayas of India and Kenya, Costa Rica, and Nigeria, all up and down the Gunnison Valley, right? And incredibly proud of it. One of your city council members, Jason McMillan's MEM graduate, Diego Plata from the Gunnison City Council, Tim Kugler from Gunnison Trails. Just know that MEM students are out there. They're looking for projects to accelerate the pace of organizations. And so I want to close, and to me that's like a nice way to build systems that are ancestral. It's just to know that through an organization like yours can connect with an organization like Western and accelerate actions driven by values. And I'll end with really a nice little interview, very brief, between Princess Desirae Johnson and Julianne Letts Warren, two intellectuals from Fairbanks, Alaska. And Johnson says, "I want to be the ancestor who crackles and spits sparks from the fire as a reminder to stay alert and follow dreams." Julianne says, "What makes for a worthy dream?" Johnson says, "I want to be the ancestor gently guiding the lost and healing the wounded." And Warren says, "To where? And what is your medicine, the source?" Johnson says, "I want to be the kind of ancestor whose laughter echoes through the canyons and lands the snowflake on an eyelash, a beautiful and fluid humor." And Warren says, "What makes you laugh?" And Johnson says, "The many questions you ask are for the reader to decipher. What kind of ancestor do you want to be?" So I hope that question sticks with you, and I hope it's been inspirational for you. Congratulations and thank you. Hey, Brett, here you go.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming out. Thank you, Dr. John Hausdoerffer, for being such an amazing person for our valley to have. And I appreciate you coming out and speaking with us tonight. As Eli mentioned, we need a few more volunteers out there. So if any of you guys want to be a good ancestor, it would be a great opportunity. No pressure. Yeah. But yeah, thank you. Just please know that we're always here for you. We love interacting with our members. You can email me at any time or call us. I think getting more input from our members helps us be a better organization all around. So if you ever have a question or thought, or you want to get more involved, just please know my door is always open, and you should definitely give me a call.